All right, welcome. Today, we are jumping into a real intellectual detective story, a mystery pulled straight from the pages of the Talmud. The case file is, believe it or not, over 1,500 years old, but the question at its heart, it feels like it could have been written yesterday.
So let me ask you this. Imagine you're doing something really meaningful, something sacred. But while you're doing it, you have a kind of improper thought about it. Does that mental intention, that thought in the back of your head, have the power to ruin the entire good deed? That's the core question we're going to investigate today, all through the lens of a really fascinating rabbinic debate. So let's start digging into the evidence.
Okay, so our crime scene, if you will, is a passage from the Mishnah, which is this ancient collection of Jewish law. The setting is the temple in Jerusalem, and we're talking about sacred offerings. The whole dispute centers on this one question. What happens when someone brings an offering, but their heart, their mind, isn't in the right place?
So the conflict really boils down to two camps. On one side, you've got a scholar named Rabbi Yehuda. He argues that if you bring a sacrifice while you're just thinking about doing one of two specific things wrong, either leaving some of it for the next day or taking it outside the temple grounds, that thought alone is enough to disqualify the entire offering. But then you have the sages, which is the majority opinion, and they totally disagree. They're like, no, the thought doesn't matter. As long as you don't actually do it, the offering is totally fine. It's valid.
Now, here's what makes this so interesting. The disagreement is actually super narrow. Get this, both sides agree that all these other improper thoughts, like intending for the wrong person to eat the offering or thinking about breaking the bones of the Passover lamb, none of those disqualify the offering. The act itself, yeah, that would be a problem. But the thought alone, everyone agrees it's fine.
And that right there is the central mystery of our case. Why these two specific thoughts? What on earth makes the intention to leave it over or take it out so uniquely powerful that, for Rabbi Yehuda, they can ruin a sacred act before it's even completed? To solve this, we need to find a motive, a really clear line of reasoning.
So the Talmud's first move, its first theory, is to go looking for clues in the ultimate source code, the Bible itself. This is theory number one. The idea that there is a hidden clue tucked away in the verses of the Torah that can explain Rabbi Yehuda's unique opinion.
A sage named Rabbi Elazar comes forward with this really brilliant piece of textual analysis. He notices that the Bible forbids leaving a sacrifice overnight, twice. And in Talmudic logic, there are no wasted words, so why repeat it? The argument is, if the first verse already forbids the action of leaving it over, then the second, seemingly extra verse must be teaching us something brand new. And his conclusion, it's coming to teach us about the intention to leave it over.
And this quote right here, this is the core principle in action. The idea is, if a verse isn't needed to teach us about the physical action, then you should apply it to the matter of intent. It's not a typo in the text. It's a deliberate clue, a hint that this prohibition extends from the physical world of actions into the mental world of thoughts. It's a really clean, elegant solution.
But here's the problem. It's a great theory, but it only solves half the mystery, right? The verses are all about leaving it over. They say absolutely nothing about Rabbi Yehuda's other problem, thought, the intent to take it out. The trail of textual evidence just goes cold, and that forces our investigation down a completely different path.
Okay, so if the text itself doesn't give us the full answer, where do we go next? Well, theory number two ditches all that complex textual detective work for something way more intuitive, just pure common sense logic. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda's reason doesn't come from a specific verse at all.
And there's a special term for this kind of argument, a savara. It's basically a legal idea that comes from what just makes sense. It's a huge tool in Talmudic debate, and it suggests that some truths are so obvious they don't need a specific verse from the Torah to back them up.
And in fact, the Talmud shows Rabbi Yehuda making this exact kind of argument himself. He basically says to the other sages, look guys, come on, we all agree that actually leaving the offering overnight ruins it, right? So why wouldn't the simple intention to do that exact same thing also ruin it? It's a really powerful direct argument. If the action is a deal breaker, the thought should be too.
But the Talmud is like the ultimate stress test. A good theory isn't enough. It has to hold up under pressure. So now, the sages take this simple logic idea and they put it on the witness stand for some serious cross-examination. Because if this is Rabbi Yehuda's rule, it has to work every single time.
So here's the big question they ask. If Rabbi Yehuda's rule is really that simple, that the intention to do any disqualifying action is itself disqualifying, Then shouldn't he disagree with the sages on a bunch of those other cases we looked at earlier? Let's see if his logic is actually consistent.
Okay, let's break down the evidence here. Look at that first row. The action of breaking the Passover lamb's bones does not disqualify the offering. So the logical theory predicts the intent shouldn't either. And Rabbi Yehuda's actual ruling? He agrees. Perfect. The theory holds. Okay, second case, same story. The logic works out, he agrees with the sages. So far, so good. But then we get to that third line, and this is the bombshell. The action of bringing the blood inside the holy sanctuary, that absolutely disqualifies the offering. So if the logic holds, the intent to do that should also disqualify it. But look at Rabbi Yehuda's actual ruling. He says the offering is valid. It's a direct contradiction. The simple common sense theory just completely falls apart.
So this is the whole case right here. This common sense theory has a fatal flaw. It predicts something that just isn't true. It seems like neither the deep textual theory nor the simple logical theory can actually explain Rabbi Yehuda's position. Our whole investigation has just hit a brick wall.
So what gives? What is the answer? We've explored these two incredibly smart lines of reasoning, one from the text, one from pure logic, and we found major holes in both of them. So, what is the Talmud's final, definitive verdict on this whole mystery?
And the conclusion is that there is no single conclusion. That's it. Instead of picking a winner, the Talmud just says, hey, you know what? There are two different ancient traditions that try to explain Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. It basically acknowledges that both the textual theory and the logical theory were out there, and it preserves them both, right next to each other, without trying to solve the conflict.
Now just think about what that means for a second. The editors of the Talmud weren't just trying to give us the right answer. They had these two different competing schools of thought. And instead of picking one and saying, this is it, they chose to show us the entire messy, brilliant debate. They showed their work, contradictions and all. And really, in the end, that's the big takeaway from this whole investigation. In the Talmud, so often, the journey is the destination. The goal wasn't just to find one simple answer to our mystery. The real value is in the rigorous intellectual process itself. The questions, the theories, the cross-examination, and the honesty to just embrace the complexity of it all.
Which kind of leaves us with one last question, doesn't it? In our own lives, when we're trying to figure things out, what's more valuable? The comfort of getting a simple, final answer, or the intellectual rigor and honesty that comes from asking the right questions, even if they don't have easy solutions? It's a puzzle this ancient case leaves for us to figure out.